Hello, do you know it's been a while? Hang on, am I way too bright? Shroud me in darkness, right, that's better. Hello. I have not done a tier list since flippin' March or April, and I enjoy them, and I miss them, and I'm bringing them back, and if you don't like them, well, first of all, no obligation to watch. Second of all, please watch. Third of all, you can blame Jake from Nerd Level Rising, who I stole this idea from, and he in turn, I believe, stole it from Preacher Reads, so we're all just sort of plagiarists, and that's fine. This is going to be a second third of the year tier list. Everything I've read since the start of June. So it's really basically the summer. I'm currently recording this kind of halfway through September. So June, July, August, September. Summer's pretty much gone if it was here. And I think early June is the very earliest that you could even qualify for summer feelings. So all of these together are what I'm calling my summer reads. You can see, first of all, that it's going to be a very positive list. Because if you look at the categories, there can be only one, there can be like four, hugely enjoyable, liked it, and at the bottom, donated to the wood chipper. So there's only one category that I would say is out and out negative. You know, liked it still implies that I had a good time with it or sections of the book. And, you know, I would recommend it to various people. So broadly, I think this is going to be a very optimistic list, but we'll see what happens. I might create categories as we go. My plan is like 45, 60 seconds a book, but if you're subscribed, you know what I'm like. I'm, to put it charitably, verbose, which is kind of emphasized by the fact that I'm 100 seconds into this video and have said very little. So let's just get going. Let's choose one. Let's choose, Gardens of the Moon. Now this is an interesting one because I think I'm going to put it in there can be like 4. So I've already taken one of the slots. Listen, Malazan is Malazan. Even Gardens of the Moon, which I would say is not Erikson's best work by any stretch, is still hugely positive. I think it's so rich and complex. The setting of Darujistan, this kind of one central city, this blue fire, gorgeous setting, just is marvelous. And so much on this book, it sets up the later stages for Malazan. And I really enjoy what Dr. Aaron Keating said, who was on the channel recently. We should stop being, condescending to authors by saying this is their first book. Give them some grace. No, this is a good first book. I do have my issues with it. I have said that I do think the ending feels rushed. And there are also elements that, you know, the infamous Gardens of the Moon isms where things happen in book 1 that don't really seem to gel with some of the things in books 2 through 10. But broadly speaking, how many times have I said broadly speaking so far? Commit. Broadly speaking, this is a really positive book. I love Malazan. I am delighted to have read this for a 4th time because, listen, if you can read a book for the 4th time and still enjoy it, I think that speaks very highly of that text. Conversely, Animal Farm, liked it, man. I'm not going to donate it to the wood chipper because it's still George Orwell, but this is another book that I believe I've read 3 or 4 times, and I'll confess, it's a brilliant first read. It's quite a good second read. I feel like I'm listening to the same album over and over and over. You know, when you're on a car trip, and maybe this is before the digital days, but you only have 2 or 3 albums to sort of pull you through a long road trip, and you get kind of sick of the albums, but you continue to listen to them because you've got nothing else to do. That's very much what Animal Farm kind of is for me at this stage. I mean, I love teaching it. It's a really good text to teach, but in terms of actually reading for enjoyment, I mean, it's kind of it's audiobook time, and it's 1.5 audiobook time because I just know the story inside out, and I can't say it's one that I'd return to over and over. So that's unfortunate. George Orwell will forgive me, and if he doesn't, he's dead. So moving on. Let's do Mushroom Blues. Hugely enjoyable. And again, the middle of this tier list still signifies great positivity. I just recorded a video for, in fact, Preacher Reads about, you know, a self-pub indie book that you think is just really, really strong. And first of all, I didn't read his prompt properly, and I just recorded 3 minutes of absolute nothing. And then I did a second take, and I chose Mushroom Blues. I think this is a fabulous novel. It's a real slump buster. The audiobook in particular is phenomenal. That setting of Neo Kinoko, which is kind of like Tokyo married with like 90s New York, at least to me, with a whole heap of mushrooms on top. It's a great police procedural thriller that goes quite dark. Even the main character herself is quite dark, but I just enjoy my time with it. I think it's a marvelous text. And I was happy to talk about it for you, Preacher, if you're watching this. I'm not sure if you are. Say hi if you like. If you don't, it'll be a bit embarrassing, but we'll forgive you. Where will I go next? The thousandfold thought. It breaks my heart to do this to R. Scott Baker. And you know what? I don't even know if this is R. Scott Baker or me. I wonder if I rushed this novel a little bit. So thousandfold thought is the third book in the... Oh my goodness, I always get them mixed up. The one before Aspect Emperor, The Prince of Nothing, which is a trilogy in the part of the 7 books that forms the Second Apocalypse series. And the thousandfold thought, I don't hate it. I mean, it's liked, but definitely it felt like a step down from The Warrior Prophet, and as we're going to talk about later, Judging Eye is just a banger. And this book kind of wanes in the middle. It wanes in the middle. And I did read it very quickly, but at the same time, it did not feel like a climax to a trilogy. So that could be my fault. I could have approached it with the wrong set of eyes. But also, it didn't feel particularly memorable in comparison to The Darkness That Comes Before Book 1 and The Warrior Prophet Book 2. It felt strangely anticlimactic, and maybe that's the point. But it wasn't what I was expecting, and I kind of finished it in this 4-day sort of whirlwind as I was moving out of Kuwait. And in the words of the great Shania, it didn't impress me much. Well, no, it did impress me, but it didn't impress me to the same extent that The Warrior Prophet did. I think The Warrior Prophet is one of the best books I've ever read. And thousandfold thoughts, I feel like I'm already forgetting parts. So maybe that's a case of rereading. We'll find out. We'll get to it. Look at this awkward pause as I select my next victim. What's this one hiding behind me? Oh, it's The Giver by Lois Lowry. Okay, right, hugely enjoyable, but behind Mushroom Blues, I think I'm the only person who's ever read this in adulthood. And I had a really good time with it. I do think it's... does this mean? I think it's Training Wheels 1984 a little bit. It's great to teach. As I just said about Animal Farm, I'm teaching this to my pupils in school right now. I mean, this idea of whether the text is more utopia or dystopia and having that discussion, and that discussion as to whether social control is worth it if you have ultimately a very safe and carefree, not necessarily free, but carefree society. I do think it's a bit abrupt. I was quite surprised the novel just sort of ended. I was expecting another 50 pages. But it's a really good book. You know, I think I would, although I just slated it and called it, you know, Training Wheels 1984. I'd still recommend you spend a day with it. I think it's an assigned text for a reason, a positive reason. Showa. Okay, can you really see this? No, it's not there. It's up here. This blew me away. In fact, I've got book 2 sitting on the floor next to me. Hold on. Brief interim. Because this is a 4-part manga series. It's a history of Japan, the Showa era of Japan. So 1926, I believe, I always get the date wrong, up until the 1980s. That's the Showa era of Japan, where Japan moved from fascism to Hello Kitty. And it's a historical account of that period, told through the lens of the author. This is also an autobiography mixed in with the historical context, and it's so well done so far. It's expensive, and look at this big deluxe floppy boy here. But it's worth the cost, and I really am looking forward to having all 4 on hardback, all 4 physical copies. Really, really happy. I took the gamble, and it was a gamble to pick it up. But now we're going to move on, and we're going to do some... Oh, you know what we're going to do? See this boy who's hiding here? That's Kaiju Battlefield Surgeon. And he's going in the wood chipper because... Ugh! Oh, sorry, that was a bit loud. My children are sleeping upstairs. Right. I was going to say I fell out of love with this book, but the reality is I was never in love with this book. I was curious about this book, and my curiosity fell off a cliff into the ocean, was eaten by sharks, regurgitated on a volcanic island, and blasted into the stratosphere. It was just dreadful, man. And I say this, Dungeon Crawler Carl, there can be only one. Second or third favourite series of all time, and I do stand by that on a reread. I don't think that's just kind of recency bias, because actually I finished it a year or 2 ago now for the first time. Kaiju Battlefield Surgeon is this weird alternate history almost of Dungeon Crawler Carl, where everything is the same but not quite as good. Parallel world Dungeon Crawler Carl. It has the lit RPG elements. It's still dark. It's got a first-person POV main character who gets empowered and actually has an animal sidekick. But it just does nothing. It does nothing as well as Dungeon Crawler Carl. The charm and the sparkle that you get with Dungeon Crawler Carl is replaced by sort of weird torture. The comedy is essentially gone. The characters are flatter. The complexity, the and I use that negatively, of Dungeon Crawler Carl, when it gets a bit too ahead of itself, and I feel like Dinneman thinks you're following along when you're not, and then the next novel, Dinneman kind of has to go, and this is what happened. That is hugely magnified here, where I'll confess, the last 50, 75 pages, I was really trying to engage with this plot. Not even at a deep thematic level, just to work out what was going on, man. So, donated to the wood chipper, unfortunately, and in the wood chipper it's going to stay. Or I'm mixing metaphors because it was in the stratosphere, wasn't it? Where will we go now? I'm just going for all the ones that are hiding because they're interesting to me. Assassination Classroom. I have lightly DNF'd this. I do plan on coming back to it. It's only one of 2 texts here that I have not quite finished. Although I guess 3 if you count Showa. I loved the beginning of Assassination Classroom. I thought it was fabulous. And I loved the kind of semi-Lovecraftian elements married with this comedy. I think very quickly I realized that this story is not what I wanted it to be. It's about a teacher and his kids, which is very sweet. But I almost feel like that the premise is different from where it was initially pitched to be. And things kind of get increasingly grounded and ground level. And the story just sort of continues, which is kind of quite true of a lot of manga, right? But I'm not really seeing the finish line, and the arcs weren't interesting to me. So, you know what? I'm not going to donate it to the wood chipper because I enjoyed my time with it, but I also needed a break, which is why I suspect it will be at the end of Liked It. Yeah, that feels nice. That feels like a good place to put it. Meanwhile, let's do another There Can Only Be Like 4. And let's do Mr. Miracle, which is the second, drawn graphic entry in There Can Be Only 4. This was recommended to me by Zachary Shea. We are going to have a discussion on it, Shea, at some point. Give me a time. What a wonderful comic by Tom King. It covers a character called Scott Free, who is the superhero Mr. Miracle, and it's just all about trauma. It's all about PTSD, because Mr. Miracle, Scott Free, basically grew up in hell as a child, and he was born of divinity but was child swapped on purpose with the devil of DC, and just sort of grew up in captivity, which is interesting just thinking about it in relation to Kaiju, because there's a lot of similarities in the sense of this text going places, but it felt very cathartic and rewarding and true Mr. Miracle in a way that Kaiju just felt shock value. Really wonderful book. And I brought it with me to Japan. It was one of the few books that I brought with me back from Scotland to Japan, because that I'd read. Because it just really did strike a chord with me, and I'm excited to reread it. I think I'll probably reread it before I have that discussion with Shay. Wonderful time. Okay, right, moving on. Let's do A Drowned Kingdom, which I'm going to put in liked, because I did like it. I really liked it. I need to save, right, okay, speaking of Shay, we're having a read-along of A Drowned Kingdom and P.L. Stewart's kind of series as a whole. The Drowned Kingdom saga, I believe it is. Book 2 is The Last of the Atlanteans. I'm looking forward to it. It took me a while, which I think is why I'm putting it down here, to work out what this novel was trying to do, because there are some kind of quirky things going on in this book. You know, I don't think for the first hour or two there was really any. I audiobooked it. I immersion read it. I read it and I audiobooked it. Piecemeal. Is that immersion reading? No, that's just being inconsistent and flicking between the two. I enjoyed A Drowned Kingdom, but again, there were some quirks, right? Like the first 2 hours of the audiobook, there's basically no direct speech, and then there's one sequence where the characters are basically spending about 300 pages in the same sort of square meter. And that really threw me. And I was trying to work out what was going on there. And I do want to save my thoughts for the discussion that I'm going to have on Shay's channel with a bunch of people. It made me really intrigued, I guess, maybe, without making me fully emotionally invested. A lot of that due to the quirks that I've just talked about. So we'll move on from there. Let's do another liked it. What did I like? Do you know what? Let's do some demonata books. So I talked to Darren Shan recently. Really nice guy. He wrote the demonata series. So I've got books 6, 8, 9, and 10. I just realised I forgot book 7. Book 7 is probably at the bottom of liked it, but I forgot to put it in, and it's too late now. Demon Apocalypse, I think was I really liked. It was just it was a fun romp, but it was a bit intense, and I think the ending pushed it up more than anything else. I think it was a bit balls to the wall, Demon Apocalypse. However, where is it? Wolf Island. I think it's hugely enjoyable. I think this is the best book in the Demonata sequence. It is a war movie book with werewolves, and I won't talk about it too long. It's 200 pages long, but I thought it was really great. I had a big smile on my face as the utter carnage unfolded, and mentally in my ears, Rolling Stones were playing the whole time. Gimme Shelter. It was every page landed for me. In fact, I can't put... You know what? I will. I'll put it above The Giver. How's that, Lois Lowry? There we go. My favourite book in the series, except Beck. Dark Calling, still liked it. Probably more better than Animal Farm. There will Animal Farm be squidged between these two kind of horror young adult novels. I think Hell's Heroes, although I enjoy what it was trying to do, I'd still put it maybe here. Controversial ending. Very interesting ending. A little bit abstract for me. And I'm still going back and forth on the extent to which I think it would have been better had it been different, and I honestly don't know, but I do think Dark Calling and Wolf Island certainly are above it, but we should move on, because we still have about 10 more books. Okay, I'm going to do it. Right, Cormac McCarthy is a controversial man, and the more I find out about the stuff, I'll just call it the stuff, the less I want to talk about him on the channel. I mean, I had a whole bunch of Cormac McCarthy videos planned, actually, that I've had conversations with friends about, and I'm not sure if I want to do them. Side issue. Not going to talk about that too much. The Road is still an exquisite novel. I enjoyed this reread immensely. It upset me. It enthralled me. I think it's a strangely hopeful book. It is about a father and a son walking through the worst apocalypse imaginable. They're walking through the ashes and detritus of humanity, and the novel just continually asks that question: is anything actually worth it when it's just the two of us walking through the landscape? And I think the prose style, I mean, McCarthy has two different prose styles, right? He has the languid, floral, blood meridian sutry prose, and he has the much more spare, sparse, filled with polysyntheton techniques, right? Like, so he has, and then they went here and they did this, and they did this, and they did this. That's polysyntheton, right? If I'm wrong, don't tell me. I just think both styles are marvelous, and I do gravitate towards that more initial floral style of Blood Meridian, but I cannot fault The Road. I think it is accomplishing exactly what it tries to do, and even if I never talk about it on the channel, I still hold this novel in high regard. I think it's really incredible, and really short too, about 250, 300 pages. Moving on from awkward Cormac, let's do The Judging Eye, which is going to be There Can Be Only One. After having a slight kind of on-off relationship with Thousandfold Thought, I just thought The Judging Eye knocked it out of the park. It's kind of a soft reset for the series because it's the start of the quartet, which is the second half of the second Apocalypse series. And people tell me that it's mostly just set up for books 2, 3, and 4 of this quartet where stuff really gets going. There is so many mental things that happen in this book and are told in such a way that it is pure nightmare fuel, but exquisitely well-written nightmare fuel. Baker marries this really, really intense philosophical style with this abstract bird's eye, sometimes biblical-esque prose, and takes these characters that we've known for, some of them for 3-4 books now, and just continues to explore their psyche and continues to put them in situations that are really hard to read, but also really rewarding because you were sort of, this is going to sound awful, kind of going through some of that punishment with them. And so I guess when you're with, I mean, maybe you could say this about Robin Hobb too, when you're with characters who go through so much, you do kind of maybe forge a bit more of a connection with them. And I do feel that with R. Scott Baker. Is this coming across well at all? I don't know. There's a sequence in this book which is very much a reverent homage to Lord of the Rings. And it possibly is my favourite sequence of anything that Baker has ever written. It is my favourite book that I've read of the last 4 months or so. It's great. Speaking of great, let's do 2 ones. I'm going to do Bold Ascension, which I can't do it on, they're going to be like 4. I'm going to put this just behind Mushroom Blues. This is the second book in the Sundered Nation trilogy by friend of the channel, Von Roycroft. I think this is a step up from book 1, Severing Sun, which I really enjoyed. I do have some quibbles with it. My plan is to finish book 3, Destiny's Doom, within the next few months and do a proper spoiler-free and spoiler-filled review of the trilogy as a whole. I think maybe it was slightly overlong, this book. I think maybe a couple more gripes. Just some pacing issues, especially with the main character and when he kind of develops in certain areas. That's all I'll say. But these are also not the biggest gripes in the world, and Vaughn will know that I was messaging him every 100 pages because I really had a wonderful time with this book. I read it having just returned to Japan, and this book was kind of carrying me through that. I'd read 30, 40 pages on the day, going to various places in Tokyo, and it was just a really nice kind of companion to have. It did take me a while. It took me a few weeks, but a very rewarding read, and on the whole, I think it does some really great stuff. So in the next couple of months, I will do a proper review of the whole trilogy when I get book 3 out of the way. And I'll be much more specific there in the things that I think this series does really well, and also the things that maybe I think could have been improved as Vaughn works on his sequel trilogy to the Sundered Nation. So I'll leave that there. Okay, apologies for the cut, but I realised I'd forgotten to add in Claire Keegan's Foster, which, you know what, I'll just do that now. Oh, no, this is so hard, there can be only 4. I think Foster was a brilliant little slice of literary fiction. I thought it was really, really incredible. This is basically a short story. I think that the audiobook was 70 minutes. I listened to it twice. I finished it and then I went back to the beginning to listen to it again, because it's like Joyce's The Dead, that short story. It feels very simplistic, and then you read it again and you spot more layers and more details. Then you read it again and you spot more layers and more details. Other novel that does that, by the way, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, in a totally different way, but I just loved reading Foster by Claire Keegan. And I'm not going to tell you anything about it because it's about 40 pages long. Among the Tibetans, however, I'm going to actually put quite low. Now, this is a bit embarrassing because I gushed about Isabella Bird, who is the traveller who wrote this book in the 1800s. Isabella Bird was this amazing person who just travelled all around the world in the Victorian era and just did whatever she liked. And I really enjoyed finding out about Isabella Bird, and I do plan to read more of her stuff. However, in hindsight, having had like a month or two now, I do wonder if I preferred learning about Isabella Bird than actually reading her book. Like, there were so many more enjoyable moments with Isabella Bird, but I always think I enjoyed reading about Isabella Bird more from other people than reading Isabella's words herself. I'd much rather have someone maybe write an autobiography of Isabella Bird that I could then sort of get those key details, because I do think she goes on a bit. I mean, it's Victorian, but man, she goes on, and there's also some awkwardness to her writing, which, you know, it's an old text, but didn't make it the most enjoyable thing for me. In hindsight, I think I married together my amazing admiration for the life of this person with the text itself, and for that reason I'd probably put it at the bottom of liked it. That being said, I am going to get a bit further with Isabella Bird because her life continues to fascinate me, even if the book... I have heard, by the way, that there are better Isabella Bird books as well, so there's maybe that too. I just chose the shortest one because I was doing a 10 books in 10 days challenge. Okay, we've got 6. Actually, all books with merit to them. None of them are going to the wood chipper. Ray Bradbury, I have not... I mean, he's hugely enjoyable. Yeah, put him here. I'm not through with 100 short stories, but I did want to include him here because I've read, I think, 40 of the 100 in this collection that I'm working through, and most of them are landing really well, and it's been so nice to get to know Ray Bradbury. We're kind of on first name terms now, me and Ray. He writes such good sci-fi. And I'm not going to tell you anything more because I'm going to do a video on Ray Bradbury, I think within the next month, and also I've been journaling about Ray Bradbury, and that is going to form the basis of a discussion I've got going on with Jake from Nerd Level Rising and Joanna. We've been trying Joanna's journaling method, and so a lot of my entries have been about Ray Bradbury, so I want to save that conversation for that time. Instead, I'm going to talk about Mercy Tears of the Fallen, which I'm going to put between Dark Calling and Drowned Kingdom. Dark Calling is such a mental book. It's a proper heavy metal book. There are so many things I liked about Mercy Tears of the Fallen by friend of the channel, wonderful man, Chance Dillon. I really enjoyed the prologue. I thought the prologue was one of the best prologues I'd actually read, and I remember finishing that prologue and immediately messaging someone going, this is so great. And there are other sequences in this book that I think are really great too. I think the ending, if you have seen the naked hardcover of Chance's book, there is a scene towards the end that is just incredible, and I'm smiling talking about it. And it's marvellous. There are marvellous moments to this book. There are also moments where I felt a little bit lost. and I felt like I wasn't getting any payoff in what I was reading. And I think part of this is, chance will say, part of this is the fact that a lot of this is going to come together in later books, and you're not really supposed to understand fully what's going on right now. And I totally understand that and respect that, and I hope that's right. But there are other moments, for example, with the visualization of some scenes, and the cloudiness sort of did obscure some of my reading experience there. So for now, it's going to be in liked it. But Ill is the Fate, I believe, is quite far forward in terms of its writing process. So maybe after Ill is the Fate, Mercy might change up or down for me. 4 left. We've got 4 left. Okay, let's do Tori's book, Cold Silver for Souls. My heart says hugely enjoyable. Part of me wants to put it in liked it. I think I'm going to put it at the bottom of hugely enjoyable, because listen, ultimately, it was hugely enjoyable. It's in some ways quite light. You know, it's a 250 page Western about necromancers. Do you know what I mean? I think it's going for enjoyable first and foremost. And it delivered. Slump Buster, brilliant little novel, and I just had so much fun with it. I really enjoyed the protagonist, and I like that the novel didn't give us full resolution on who that protagonist is. There are so many admirable things, and I had a darling time going through it. I think I did 50 pages a day for 5 or 6 days, and it really did kind of carry me through quite a difficult work week. This is one of the ones that I'm most cautious of putting somewhere on this list, because I finished it about 2 days ago, and so if there's recency bias anywhere, it's going to be here. So after a week, I might move this up or down, I'm not sure, but I'm going to let it percolate a little more. But if anyone said to me, would you recommend Tori's book, my answer would definitely be yes, and it's definitely a good sort of weekend read as well. Oh my goodness, there can only be like 4, and I want to put one of these in. I'm not going to. I'm going to put Purple and Black here. This was recommended by Alan from the Library of Alexandria, and it's, again, novella, tiny, 100 pages, I believe. Epistolary. I can never say epistolary, but I just said it, so I think that is a win. It's really short. What it is, it's 2 characters writing back and forth. The king has just recommended one of his mates go to a really far afield territory in the kingdom and kind of oversee a conflict that's happening there. And it's just laced with humor. It's laced with humor, but kind of dark humor. It feels a bit like Abercrombie meets Pratchett in the writing style, which is a very good place to be. And I was going to say I cackled my whole way through it, but if I say I cackled my whole way through it, that sort of implies that maybe there wasn't weight to it. And there was definitely weight to this tiny little thing. The last 15, 20, 25 pages have a real punch to them, and an earned punch. I think this novel does a lot in a very short space of time. And KJ Parker is someone I do want to read a little bit more of. I mean, I've seen the 16 Ways to Defend a Walled City. Might read that soon. The problem is KJ Parker stuff is so hard to come by, especially when you're living abroad, and you want a physical copy. So we'll see what happens there. But this was one of the surprises of the year, I'd say. Let's do a little piece of ground. I really like this one. I don't want to put the 2 texts that I'm teaching together, but I'm going to. I'm going to do it. This is set in the West Bank. This is set in Ramallah and follows a 12, 13-year-old boy called Kareem as he tries to navigate just growing up and being a boy. Like, it is kind of partially Bildungsroman, but also partially, did I pronounce that right, Bildungsroman? Yes, I did. But it's also partially like exposing what it's like to live in an area with such high concentrated doses of trauma. And again, this is one I'm teaching, and teaching these words to kids like pot shot and curfew, and having them kind of realize what that means and what that entails in terms of conflict and control has been a really, I was going to say fun experience, but certainly eye-opening experience. A Little Piece of Ground is really well written, again, 200 pages, and I would say worth your time. I mean, it's certainly timely, isn't it? And that leaves us with Wandering Inn Book 7. This is the Reigns of the Score. I'm about 8,000 pages into the Wandering Inn now, and I'm going to put this just a touch above Ray Bradbury. It's really hard for me to rank The Wandering Inn because it doesn't really start and it doesn't really end. It is a soap, a television soap of a series. But what I will say is this one, I don't know if it's on purpose or not, but it has a very interesting structure where the climax happens halfway through the book, 40% through the book. I've heard Sword of Kaigen does the same. 400 pages in, there is this big climactic battle. The ending doesn't really have much of a climactic battle, and so most of the second half of this book is fallout from this really terrible, traumatic period. And I just think it worked really well, and it was Again, I don't know who decided to do this because it's not like it's a standalone work, right? It's part of a larger volume, but for some reason it did click with me. And there are certain I think what Wandering In does very well is, at least so far, is telling such a massive story, but it actually is quite geographically contained. It's almost like Gardens of the Moon in that sense, where it stays in one locale and doesn't fling you about the map utterly relentlessly. And I appreciate it for that. And you do get to spend more time with the characters, despite there being such a large cast of them. It doesn't feel too unwieldy, despite being in some ways the most unwieldy piece of fiction ever written. Anyway, look at that. That looks about right to me. That looks about right. As you can see, I mean, as I said previously, liked it is still high. So I think I've had a great 4 months. Let me know what you've been reading. Let me know if you've read any of these. And yeah, thanks for coming to my TED Talk, and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye.